welcome to Broken Entertainment, where we continue to cover the death rattles of DC Comics. So, two pieces of news emerged separately today that were very interesting when they were linked. And the first one I'm going to start with is the new vice president at DC Comics. They hired Jean Cho as their new vice president. And he has an interesting history. He has, as they say, quite a resume with lots of big names and big brands in his past. He also has a major track record working for companies that are then bought out by bigger companies, and seems to have a part in preparing them for acquisition. Now, you may remember, and if not, I'll try to link the video, but I discussed in a previous video that there's rumors that DC Comics, is the publishing arm, is actively being shopped out to wealthy enough buyers who may have interest. Now all of a sudden they've hired a guy as vice president who basically has made a career out of getting companies sold. We'll cover a little more on him. Interested in his education. I'm not that interested. Here we go. Became a management consultant at PwC in 2000, then a strategic planner at Diesel Cora in 2002, then a brand planner kicking off Nike Sportswear Lifestyle category in 2004. Became an associate brand manager at Vitamin Water in 2006, before and after its acquisition by Coca-Cola. Then brand manager at Luxottica for the spectacle side of Ralph Lauren, Prada, and Dolce & Gabbana in 2008. Senior brand manager at Absolute in 2010. Director of Cooper Spirits Company in 2009. And named Echo Domini's Menswear Designer of the Year. He was then made Vice President of Marketing when Cooper Spirits was acquired by Bacardi in 2012. Before becoming President and General Manager of the health and fitness startup Tangram Factory in 2015, which was acquired by Keiko Ventures Group. He was then VP Marketing of Davos in 2017, before it was acquired by Diego. He was then Vice President Marketing of Acreage Holdings in 2018, a leading vertically integrated cannabis operator before it was acquired by Canopy Growth. And in 2020, he was Vice President Marketing of Oxygen Beverages as Stephen Curry and LPGA champion golfer Michelle Way became the new owners of the brand. I believe coincidences can happen, but I don't believe coincidences can happen that many times in a row. And I'm going to draw on a football analogy of mine. So, I was a huge fan of the St. Louis Rams. And when they hired Jeff Fisher, a lot of people were going on about his coaching record and so on and so forth. The other thing people were pointing to was, at the time, the Rams owner was looking at potentially moving out of the city. And people said, well, Jeff Fisher is the only head coach that has a lot of experience moving a team from one city to the next. And wouldn't you know it, they kept him just long enough to move them from one city to the next. This reminds me of that. Where this guy has made a career of not selling companies, preparing companies for sale. Or acquisition, as they like to call it. And now, all of a sudden, he's working at DC Comics. Tied that with the rumor that I covered earlier You have a very interesting set of coincidences, backed by a very long series of coincidences. Then, you have this rumor. Robert Kirkman rumored to buy DC Comics, also posted today. Now, these two are not linked. I don't know why, because it seems kind of obvious to me once you look at this vice president they've hired and his history. This is what the man does. It is claimed that The Walking Dead's Robert Kirkman is in talks with AT&T to purchase DC Comics. The claim was made last month by former DC Comics artist Ethan Van Sciver, who I will pause here and say that he has been right almost 100% of the time when talking about this subject with DC Comics and the future of DC Comics. Every time he has said something is going to go down, it has. Who commented on a Bleeding Cool article about a potential DC Comics buyout, which is the article I was referencing as well in a previous video. Something Van Sciver first said was going to happen over a year ago. Similar to what Van Sciver has said all along, the Bleeding Cool article states that AT&T will stop publication of DC Comics comic books and license out the characters to other publishers, with it said Marvel, confirming rumors, IDW, and Dynamite have all approached DC, but it said the prices cited were too high to strike a deal. The article offers that last year, a number of high-rolling individuals were given tours of the DC Comics offices in Burbank with AT&T Warner's officials. There have been discussions about licensing DC Comics. It's noted the talks were just about the comics and not about the rights to the movies, TV shows, gaming, or merchandise. The deal, if it happens, would see DC Comics licensed out to where whoever got the license would be free to develop the characters as they wish, with AT&T free to adapt those stories if AT&T Warner Brothers wish to do so. While the article didn't name specific names, it dropped hints as it referenced those individuals in the comic book business who own multi-million-dollar copies of Action Comics #1 and Detective Comics #27. Ethan Van Sciver, who recently received credit for thanks in Zack Snyder's Justice League movie, offer that sources have filled in him in that two individuals in the comic book business are interested in buying DC Comics, which includes The Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman and Diamond Distributors founder Steve Geppi. Please do not go to Steve Geppi. So, this goes more into what Ethan has talked about in the past. I said before, oftentimes when you start to see these rumors repeatedly come up, where there's smoke, there's fire. And when you look at the pattern of DC Comics over the last year and a half, they have fired the vast majority of their highly paid staff and left mostly lower end people in place. And that's one of the things you do when you're preparing to try to spin off a company, because it makes the cost of purchase that much smaller. They have reduced the number of comics they're making significantly from 52 and higher to 30 and under. We see muddled pathways forward with their comic books, where you had the Future State event where everything is suddenly canon but nothing is canon. It's kind of steps that kind of open everything up. And we've heard the rumors multiple times that AT&T was going to sell. And now you have this rumor followed by this guy being hired. They're done. It's over. DC Comics is going to be sold. It's pretty apparent. The writing is, before you could say, well, rumors, speculation. This guy This is all this man seems to be connected with, is selling companies to other companies. Certainly, there's no indication of him being particularly into the comic book industry. All of a sudden, he's moved over from a plethora of different brands that are totally unrelated. So, it's done. It's just a matter of time. It really is. I think it's very apparent now. And I suspect it will be if 6 months to a year. And I suspect that when stuff starts to break, it's going to happen really fast. All of a sudden, we'll know things. It may be less time than that. I don't know. You know, these things can move glacially or they can move really fast. But this hiring and that rumor, to me, you can't really deny that it's happening anymore. It's just a matter of when and who. And DC Comics has nobody to blame but themselves. They have destroyed their brand as a comic book publisher. They have ruined their characters with successive terrible hires and terrible assignments to books that have led to awful stories and bad sales. And they made the idiot decision to move from New York to California and build a brand new office when they already had an office. So, you know, here we are. We'll see what happens. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing and hit the bell for notifications. I will see you next time.